Right. Well, it has reached 6 o'clock on my clock. So, and we have a rather full schedule, full event for all of you tonight. So, I think I would like to get started. So, good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome you to the 130th International ARC Seminar, the first of this school year. My name is Travis Seifman. I'm the research manager at the Art Research Center here at Ritsumeikan. This is the International ARC Seminar is an event which we hold roughly once or twice a month during the school year. So whatever that works out to be, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 times a year, something like that. We've been holding it in, I'm not quite sure precise. I just tried to look it up just now, see when exactly it became the International ARC Seminar, but we've been holding this at the ARC. We've been counting towards number one was sometime in maybe 2012 or 2013. So this is the 130th one. Tonight we have the pleasure of a special collaborative event in celebration of the renewal this past December of a memorandum of understanding between Ritsumeikan University, Ritsumeikan Asia Pacific University, and SOAS at the University of London. Tonight's event is co-organized by the Art Research Center and the Ritsumeikan Center of Game Studies here at Ritsumeikan, and the Center for Translation Studies and the Japan Research Center at SOAS, University of London. We have two speakers tonight, each of whom will speak for about 30 minutes, followed by about 30 minutes of Q&A and general discussion moderated by Professor Nakamura Akinori from the Ritsumeikan Center for Game Studies. And before I turn it over to Nakamura-sensei, I just wanted to add also, this is sort of the first of two events. So next week we'll have a regular ARC seminar, which I'll introduce at the very end. And then on May 8th, we'll be having sort of the second half of this special collaborative event on May 8th, which will be a collaborative event between Professor Monica Hinkle from SOAS and Takenaka Yumi Sensei from here at Ritsumeikan. So with that, I'll pass it over to Professor Nakamura.
Okay, so I'd like to explain today's lecture. It's collaborative works between Ritsumeikan Center for Game Studies and then SOAS, Center for Translation Study, and then Japan Research Center. And then I'd like to briefly explain about the Ritsumeikan Center for Game Studies. RCGS, or Ritsumeikan Center for Game Study, established in 2011. But even before that, from 1998, we started out having this game research place called the Game Archive Project. And then we extended that beyond just archiving, and we're doing a lot of study about digital games and stuff like that. And then since 2011, we mostly consist of researchers who are researching from multiple disciplines about, but the subjects being game or game industry, or studying about the games by close reading and so forth. So we have some researcher from digital humanities, others, like I said, the game archive or preservations, and the others are working on applied game studies, gamification, serious games, and also game engineering and artificial intelligence and so forth. So various type of a scholar are together, and then along with that, we have game developers actually collaborating with us, because some of the game scholars are not faculty of our Ritsumeikan. With that said, our part will have Shin Sensei. He's a PhD, who got a PhD from Ritsumeikan and focused on CS gaming in Korea. So Junior Shin Sensei will be explaining about that in detail at the later part of this session. And then the lecture will start from a source, Professor Avi. And then Sato Sensei will explain detail about him and his expertise. So I'll give you hands to Sato Sensei, please.
Thank you very much, Professor Nakamura, for your kind introduction. Hi, everybody. My name is Nana Sato Rosberg. I actually graduated from Ritsumeikan University, and I'm teaching translation studies at SOAS University of London. I'm also in charge of Center for Translation Studies in SOAS. Center has established in 2008. Since then, we are working on translation studies, but our regional expertise is Asia, Middle East, and Africa. So localization research is actually widely known as part of translation studies as well. And we also, center also offer a PhD in translation studies and a master translation and a bachelor translation programs as well. We also teach game localization as part of our MA translation. Because of this, a growing interest on game localization or game studies in the UK, we are also expecting or planning to develop game studies further. And also we, Center for Translation Studies, is keen to do research more on game studies. So for example, this February, we organized an event called a Games Localization Panel and Networking event with one of the growing game companies in the UK called Payload Studio. And about 60 people joined, and several companies like Alpha Games and Payload Studio and Marvelous Europe presenters came from those companies. So it was well received. So we would like to continue organizing such event together with Ritsumeikan Center for Game Studies. Professor Nakamura, please. So today, one of my colleagues who is keen to develop game studies at SOAS and himself wants to do more on game studies, Dr. Ali Arabi will present his new research, right, Ali? So should I give it to Ali or Nakamura Sensei?
Oh yes, please give the microphone over to Ali, and then please start sharing a PowerPoint slide and start the research.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ali,
Professor
dear my
Nana,
friend, please.
And honorable colleagues from Ritsumeikan University, great to be here. Let me share my lecture. I believe you can see.
Yes, looks good.
Am I correct? Sure. So the title of lecture today and my brief research is about beyond Orientalism, the evolution of game studies in Iran's digital realm. I believe you may see the second page now, but so I give you quite a background on what is happening and why is that important, because when you say Iran and digital game studies, some researchers are not fully informed and hasn't been properly covered. But then I was surprised myself to see how advanced Iran became in terms of developing digital game studies. So I give you a very quick background on the evolution of game studies in Iran within the cyber domain from late 1990s to the present day. The aim of this talk is to explore the development trajectory of digital games in Iran and to investigate its cultural significance in countering a Western Orientalist discourse within video games. By examining the growth of digital game studies in Iran and providing examples, this research talk aims to shed light on how Iran has navigated the digital space to establish its unique voice in the global digitalized gaming landscape. Video game development in Iran is linked to a country's cyberspace initiative, which is very keen on developing its technology and knowledge about cyberspace. They are in line with the grand technological and scientific strategy of enhancing cyberspace know-how. And this is the grand strategy of the country, being very keen on that element. Cyberspace technology in 21st century It's something that the world is now looking into it. We already moved into cyberized world, and now we are actually dealing with artificial intelligence, which is growing significantly day by day. So this is very important to know that Iran has established itself as a significant Middle Eastern global South player in international digital gaming landscape. But then before I start talking about this, why video game matter actually to countries like Iran? Why is that important? Nearly 3 billion gamers worldwide we have. Online games and streaming have become a pivotal part of everyday life for gamers across the globe, leading to new conceptions and constructions of identity virtually. Now we are facing with a virtual identity. Games transcend boundaries, social class, gender. There is nothing to monopolize that domain. Video games become tools to define culture and identity through reimagining historical events, which are then either contested or even glorified by consumers, as a researcher, Melinda Cohn, put it. But then, from my point of view and my research, I noticed that the impacts the digital games has on individual mindset. Games direct the players to engage with the narrative. They are they reproduce discourse through one-to-one interactions. Digital games impact the players and create a virtual popular culture. Video games literally promote connections through audio-visual knowledge production and portrayals that create effect for the player. Literally, individual emotions are running high and are directly impacted by a virtual space at that very moment. To pay attention is the concept of emotions. So digital narratives we have, or something, I come up with something called, I coin it as cyberized popular culture. Video games produce discourse. But here, before we talk about the Iranian concept, we need to know why Iran even became interested in developing video games and digital video games. It's because we need to look into Western narrative of Middle East and Global South in the video games, influencing the Western productions, influence cultural norms and values, particularly among youth, creating a digitalized popular culture. Perception of culture through video games is something that you may study later through the digital humanities. The case study here, theoretically, we need to look into discourse of power and Western relationship with Iran are expressed through extraordinary industry, digital entertainment. We need to understand the discourse of power and the Western perception in this regard through that digitalized entertainment. So some games generate and communicate cultural meaning, the purpose, other than just gameplay. These are not just gameplay, those digitalized games, when it comes to the perception about the Middle East. Video games are taking gamers into a digitalized voyage, a cyberspace that facilitates cross-cultural communication. How narratives and identities are reimagined by different nation states are important in the narratives of the digitalized games. Is not only for the sake of playing, but is about reflecting a narrative. So having said that, I take you very quickly through the Western narrative of Iran and the region of the Middle East in the video games. By studying it, we realize there's something called Orientalist discourse, representation of the other within digital games technology. Western video games promoting Orientalist discourse, culture of phobia, warmongering, and normalization of violence against the Orient. And Orient can be in the Middle East in this section, or the Greater Asia, or anywhere else. The Western character in the games, in the digital games, the Occident, are represented as a rational, as Edward Said mentioned in Edward's an Orientalist discourse. The character in the video games of the produced in the Western states are hero, planners against the East, Orient. And the Orient is represented as irrational, violent, and legitimate targets for eliminations by the gamers. If you remember, I mentioned rising up the emotions. So it's vital to study the theoretical framework of power and discourse, and therefore relationships between Western and Middle Eastern societies, in this case, Iranian society, to understand the concept. So the US hegemonic discourse mirrored within the digital video games. I'll give you two examples here to understand. One of the games is the Battlefield 3. The video game sold 5 million copies after being on shelves for a single week, and starting in Iraq, it depicts US boots on the ground in Iran. Such games are heroizing violent characters fighting in the Oriental landscape. I'm not going to go through the whole game, but that shows some elements. I will show you some of the pictures as well. The other point from the translation studies perception is some Western gamers, developers narrate wrong translation, translating the Oriental language wrongly, as if it doesn't matter what kind of language is used, because it is about the exoticness of those languages. The other game is called Prince of Persia, The Sounds of Time game series. The Orientalist discourse can be seen there. Distorted history, exoticizing, and then literally digitalized Orientalism within cyberspace. As you can see from this photo, this is the slide down there shows the American troops are entering Tehran, the capital of Iran, and that is the Milad Tower in the game. So literally, they're entering into the capital city to create destructions. The other character on the Prince of Persia, you can see a character with a turban, is an amalgamation of Indian, Arabic, Persian, Islamic character, but it shows in it as a demon. And the other one is a hotel, but the wrong writing, which doesn't make any sense in that case. Understanding that, I'm coming to the case study of developing video games in Iran. So that's why we need to understand why Iran has become very interested in developing its own digitalized game technology. TV games became popular in early 80s with Atari, and then late 80s with Commodore, and then later with Nintendo, and then PlayStation, Sony PlayStation to follow. Iran began developing a strategy to develop knowledge about the cyberspace in response to what Iran defines Western cultural assault via cyberspace. In late 1990s, Iran began experiencing an era of expansion of information, communication, and internet technologies. Importance of having a place in virtual space, not only as the user and consumer, but as a developer to influence digitalized popular culture within a borderless cyberspace is the aim of Iranian strategists. Producing counter-narrative of Iranian or Middle Eastern culture and reimagining cultural identity through digital games is the main aim. Knowledge-based companies are actually leading on cyber technology in Iran. In 2007, Iran Computer and Video Games Foundation, IRCVGF, the website is there in the link, was established. This foundation is subsidized by the Ministry of Culture, and 37 private companies are the members of the foundation, which are literally developing video games. IRCVGF is guided by the Supreme Council for Cyberspace. Iran has a Supreme Council for Cyberspace to supervise that. The SEC, it's called, supervises and regulates game production to boost the game industry in Iran and beyond. According to the foundation's Iran Computer Video Games Foundation report in 2019-2020, out of 32 million Iranian players, 29,300,000 are mobile platform players to play at least 1 hour a week with one of the smartphones or tablets. Nowadays, Iran ranks first in production of computer game science in the Middle East, according to Tehran Times 2023, and Iran enjoys the first place amongst the regional countries and the whole Muslim world when it comes to production of scientific output in the field of computer games. Several private and knowledge-based companies work with Iran Video Games Foundation. Iran Computer and Video Games Foundation organizes annual festival. It is called Fajr Digital Game Festival. These festivals are designed to promote digital and virtual industry by literally headhunting talented youth and IT graduates to join the foundation to produce and develop video games. Advancing its production started from the PC games and the PlayStation games to literally focusing on app-centered mobile, Android mainly, and then online games, reaching out to the population beyond age and gender. If you visit Tehran Metro underground, you see people from different ages are sitting and then literally playing video games through their mobile phones. So produced digital games are advertised in Iran. Those are produced locally for the consumers via specific digital market for video games called Bazinegar, which gamers can purchase. I give you very few examples of some of those games that produced in Iran here, developed video games, but there are different narratives here. One section is the political narrative with the digital domain, creating counter narrative. That's what I was trying to say in the beginning, why the Western Orientalist discourse caused the reaction for Iran to develop its own digitalized games to counter-narrate that. Developing empathetic digital games, a response to the Western digital games industry's attempt to undermine the Islamic Republic of Iran. Literally, these games that produced are the digitalized propaganda by Iran to react to digitalized propaganda by the Western producers, creating counter-narratives to Orientalist Western media narrative, anti-colonial discourse within digital space. So you see, the video games are not only video games, it's actually creating that popular culture and narrative, counter-narrative standing in that domain. One of the games that I put it there for you is called Ambassador of Love. It was produced in 2020. And then it gives the narrate the Muslim Shia history of Ashura 680 AD. This was produced by a company called Matna, a center affiliated with IRGC Cyberspace. And it's very interesting to know the developers of this digitalized game have spent 2 years, 24/7, writing the story and digitalizing it, which has been authorized by relevant Islamic centers and historians. And it was received quite well because it has a very high graphic in that case. The interesting about the game is that it takes the gamer to those medieval Islamic architecture, and then takes them to the geography of Middle East, like the deserts and the palm trees and all the rest of it. It gives you takes you to a voyage of those days of 1,400 years ago in a very highly produced graphic. The other game is called The Commander of the Resistance, the Amerly Battle 2022. It was produced at Monadian Media Company, which is part of the Revolutionary Guard Cyberspace Organization satellite. And this is about the story of the General Qasem Soleimani, who was assassinated by the United States. But then the story is about going to the battlefield, fighting against the ISIS terrorists, and takes the heroizing liberation of Iraq from ISIS terrorists. 1979 Revolution Black Friday is another video games with a high graphic technology which narrates the revolution for the gamers. But this is not only, Iran is not only producing digitalized propaganda games. There are games also that they work on languages, translation and culture, localization of video games in Iran. I'm not going to go through all of it because of the time, but there are those games are designed literally to introduce the Iranian Persian culture and to teach Persian language to non-Persian speakers in a funny way. So it takes you to fun, but it gives you a voyage to the culture, food, cuisine, and the language. Other games that Iran produces is remapping cultural and historical discourse. I'm not going to go through all of them, but they're quite interesting games. That is a quest of Persia, Nader's Blade. It talks about the Iranian different kingdoms, kingdom dynasties, and the empires that they built. The other game is called The Tale of Bistun, produced in 2018. Is a kind of a myth, a Persian myth or legendary, which is produced for Android and iOS games, and it takes you to that Persian literature in a very interesting and quite exciting game. The other one is called Bardia, which is pre-Islamic character, brave soldier of Persian Empire who was fighting against the Alexander at that time. There are also other games that they do not have necessarily any cultural, linguistic translation or political narratives, only to be part of the commercial markets that you may also, in the website of Bazinagar, see them. And many games such as Volleyball 2016, English 3, teaching English for Persians, Fruitcraft, Mabanu. And it's very interesting, some of those games, main characters are girls, that they are actually going into the virtual world in this case. And the Warriors 2017 Android, which is trying to compete with the American, Japanese, Korean, and other digital games. In conclusion, before I finish, is we need to look at the economic and technological rationale, challenges and obstacles Iran is facing at this moment. American sanction against Iran, Section 43.1, and which completely hinder Iranian access to video games. So Iranians also lack access to a public cloud, and therefore they use VPN as well to bypass internet filtering, and therefore they have very limited access to the platforms. However, they currently have limited collaborations with the Chinese and the Russian developers working together at some points, but they have restricted access to global platforms such as Apple iOS and Google Play. So they try to bypass that. But then having said that, Iranian digital game developers aim at local market as well as global market. And they are hoping, with their knowledge that they have today and developing year by year, to one day in post-sanction era, to compete and collaborate with other big game producers in the world, such as Japan, China, Korea, United States, and Europe. And in conclusion, Iran focused on developing game studies not only advances its cyber technology and economic resilience, but also serves as a platform to promote Persian language, indigenous culture, and historical narratives. By leveraging video games as a medium for cultural expression and storytelling, Iran effectively navigates the global gaming landscape while asserting its unique identity and countering Orientalist discourse prevalent in Western media. Iranian digital game developers know-how, knowledge, highly qualified human resources, and fertile market, which future developers and digital game developers should pay attention to Iranian developers as the number one in the Middle East at this moment. Cyberspace cannot be monopolized, and that's how this space or domain is becoming even more important in today's world and beyond. Future research may look into generative AI. Algorithmic bias, radical reshaping of future digital games is important. AI algorithms used in video games have the potential to perpetuate bias and unfairness in designing those games, both intentionally or unintentionally. For example, by generating characters which show perhaps racist, sexist, or violent behavior against the Orient through the given data and digital information, which Asian game makers are trying to have knowledge about AI and to mitigate that elements. And then, of course, references are all available in that case. I hope I managed to maintain my time within 30 minutes.
Okay, so it's going to be our time to introduce Dr. Shin. Dr. Shin Jin-yan is a senior researcher at the Kinugasa Research Organization, and she's from Korea, and graduated from a doctoral program of Graduate School of Core Ethics and Frontier Science at Ritz-Macon in 2020. And she's specialized in game studies and area studies in combination of gamifications and serious games, particularly what's taking place in Korea. So with no further ado, I'd like to give hands to Dr. Shin, who will prepare for the presentation. Please, Dr. Shin, start the presentation.
Thank you for introducing me, Nakamura Sensei. Hello, I'm really glad to be here today. And today, I'm going to talk about the overview of serious game in South Korea. Today's content and topics are mostly based on newly published book in this year. And this presentation is now focused on how to create effective serious game or how to enhance their effect. Instead, I aim to provide a general overview of the social cultural context and outcomes and educational potential of serious game in South Korea from the social cultural perspective. And also, I will identify and discuss the transformation of serious game in South Korea and address the key issues regarding these changes and surrounding other aspects of serious games and their potential. And also, I'll examine the characteristic of gaming places. The gaming places is the internet cafe we call the Korean called PC Bang, which gameplay take place, and also the distance between game realities and reality, focusing on the game developer's perspective and the player's feedback. The methodology include literature reviews and the field work, and I conducted field work, and I also did the interview both in personal and online. So allow me to briefly introduce the items on today's agents, and I would like to start with the question, what were serious games? And it involves the original definition of serious game in general, and how this term has been transformed into 기능성 game. It means functional game, which means the game should be educational, functional, and the term is for serious game in Korea. And also, I'll start by giving a brief historical overview of serious games in South Korea, and then I'll move on to gaming places and explain how realities are portrayed within serious games. The reason why I particularly interested in gaming places is because they play a crucial role in shaping how games are perceived in South Korea. For example, that this game is negative or this game is positive. So these are examples of serious games. So there are so many serious games we have, and also you can see the middle in the slide. This is the American Army. This one is the very first serious game published by the American US Army to just educate and promote and recruit prospective soldiers. So there are various definitions of serious games, and these definitions share common characteristic, but they are depending on researchers, they're a bit different. They have a different explanation though. The concept of serious game was originally defined by Abt in his book Serious Game, and then he explained that serious games have specific purposes and beyond entertainment, and utilized in various fields, for such as education, militaries, and politics. And at the time of Abt's definition, the genre of the games did not exist like today, and game industry was not developed as it today too. So the current definition of a serious game and its popularization appear to follow after establishment of Serious Game Initiative in 2002. And through this, the concept of serious game became widespread and was shared by many researchers. And also there are two main perspectives to understand serious game. The first one is the serious game. See the serious game as they are intentionally designed for serious purposes. The second one is more broader than first one. So they include any games, even commercial games, and they address real life issues or contribute to education or have a significant impact of players. They considered as a serious game, even though regardless of their initial design. This concept of understanding serious game is directly related to the serious gaming. They also they have a lot of similar concepts. For example, gamification, similar to serious game. According to the definition by the KOCA, the Korea Creative Content Agency, serious games are not simply used for fun, but they have also educational purpose. And also they said that serious game is 기능성 game, functional game. This term is including that translate to the games should have a function and the effectiveness. So as a research, most of the serious games developed in this period in South Korea was designed to emphasize educational outcomes and often overlook entertainment values and players' fun. And also in Japan, the Fujimoto said serious games are games, especially digital games, that utilized for various fields, including education. This explanation is more broader than the 기능성 game definition, and it also influenced to the Korean serious game too. And these are the examples of serious game developed in this period, 2000s. One is successful cases, and the other one is notorious example for failure. The StarStone was supported by the Korean government, and they really emphasize only for the functional aspect. And then, so this game was perceived as extremely boring, and while others were hard to recognize this is a game. And also this game also failed to capture the players' interest and meet their preference. The other one is Hanjamaru. How about Hanjamaru? What do you think? Do you think still seems enjoyable? Created in 2009, so it may not have the same impact today, but this is the special case in serious game history in South Korea as successful cases, and received a lot of positive feedback from players at the time and well received. So it adapted the popular game genre, MMORPG at the time, and they just maintained a balancing between the fun and the educational purpose. So now, just from now on, I would like to just look on through the brief historical overview in South Korea. And from the 17th and 19th, they also have 교육 content in game before arrival of serious games. However, this kind of educational 교육 game and content is more akin to learning toys than to contemporary serious game. So they have the first gaming places, which is called 전자오락실. It was influenced by Japanese game centers. And this game place was considered particular for adolescent, the young generation. And also they are often considered negative places, particularly for the young generation's mental health. In the early days, this 전자오락실 advertisement was claiming that playing digital games at 전자오락실 improve a young generation's intelligence and school achievement. But however, the negative perspective toward the gaming was prevailing and became this kind of negative image was enhancing afterward. And in 2000, serious game began to generate more discussion. In the South Korean government think that this game is promoting this. They have a game industry is a potential industry for this Korea, and they promote gaming. They made a policy to promote gaming and actively supported the industry, the part as a national strategy. However, they also have a game brain and game phobia perspective toward digital games. So it was everyone said that playing digital games may lead to the game braining and game phobia. So according to this perspective, serious games seen as an alternative solution for recovering the image of the Korean game industry, and also just foster the growth of Korean game industry. So at that time, and also the PC Bang, the most well-known gameplay scene was increased because of the popularity of PC games like StarCraft. And also, not only serious game, they use the commercial game, cost of the shelf games, commercial games, also into promote educational use. They also implemented the G-Learning project to use this kind of commercial game. in 2009. So Gunju and Kaosang is a typical MMORPG game. They used this game for a G game learning project as at school in the educational settings too. And so with 2010 or so, they have a lot of changes in 2000s, and they also have successful Japanese serious games are released, and also the Nintendo D was released in Korea too, South Korea too. And this was really attracting attention in South Korea, and especially Nintendo DS was found successful, where the console or handheld console, home console was not a mainstream component of gaming culture in South Korea. However, this kind of the South Korean government support and effort, the serious games are like the serious games supported by Korean government was failed to gain attraction and have a poor reception with criticism. So as a result and as a response to the failure of digital platform of serious games supported by the Korean government, they are preparing this interest in non-digital alternative, often referred as analog serious games. Some analog serious games are released on non-digital platform, including board games and card games. And also this kind of educational board game, analog serious game, become widespread phenomenon in South Korea. And also educational board game companies, because of their popularity, they offer some kind of special courses like educational board game instructor courses and event. So I conducted field work at one of the educational board game instructor courses, and then in the context, they think that many educational board games have been released and evaluated as an effective and ideal educational tool compared to digital platform of serious games. In this course, the most of participants were either seeking employment in the field or were working at the cram school instructor or part-time after-school instructors. However, they showed a lot of positive feedback to the educational board games, but it was not certain that this kind of educational board game was directly related to the school achievement or educational values. Despite to the positive evolution, such as promoting social interaction or communication, or this kind of games doesn't have a violence or addictive element, it's not directly related to the educational benefit and remain uncertain. So I was not sure about this kind of analog serious game were more effective or more educational compared to digital type of serious game. One thing is evidence that the educational board game market was growing in the field of serious game and creating new job opportunity for those who are seeking employment in this field. And in South Korea's serious game scene, there's trend toward content diversification and new platform and game accessibility issues with indie game developers. as you may know, indie game developers are just mostly a small group of game developers with a small budget. These indie game developers are contributing, creating innovative and creative serious game. And this rise of indie game developers has influenced the diversification of serious game these days, and with a wide range of new content and platform entering the market. Seoul 2033, you can see in slide, is the game. The first indie game is considered the game accessibility issues for who have disabilities. And this trend was boosted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And since 2020, people have been increasingly paying attention to the potential of serious game in South Korea again. So I would like to go on to the gaming places. So these are the gaming places I'm considering as the gaming places. So the gaming places are really important part in the South gaming cultures. These places are like more like the people can talk and interact, and both in personal and virtually. And this place also enable players to interact freely. And so in South Korean gaming culture, there are many gaming places like PC bangs and board game bangs, Pulsu bangs, and Buyers bang. And these many gaming places are directly influenced by the Korean bang culture. The bang culture, and the bang means a room and a space in Korean. And it was like private and family-centered spaces, but it was extended to the outside private, not the private, the public spaces, and also it was formed outside in the family-centered spaces and made people interact and communicate. So this kind of bang culture is very important element in the Korean gaming cultures. So it influenced a lot of gaming places too. But the previous research on game studies that think that this kind of gaming places are just more like the third place. So they utilize the concept of the third place, such as by Oldenburg, to explain what are these game places, what the game places are. But however, this kind of gaming places are not exactly same with third place. They are also may considered as non-places like shopping mall, airport, such as by Auje. And also they can be a container like the small space of that people enjoy the game. However, this kind of gaming places are basically like interaction between gameplay sections and thus shape the people's perception of games. For example, this is the PC bang, and this PC bang was not, the space are not divided, is half opened. So just young people go there and play games, and then they want to talk with a friend. They freely talk to the friend, and they also just want to take a break, and they just order some food because they have a delivery service too, and they also have a snacks to can order. So this is kind of together apart culture in Korean 따로또 같이 culture. So they can enjoy this kind of cultures in the gaming places, not only for gaming. Also, the Buyarbang is they can just enjoy the both the ordinary and the extraordinary experience within the small VR booth too. So these gaming places are share the characteristic of third place, but is some part are far from the third place, and also these gaming places stand apart from the non-place. And so I think that this kind of gaming places have their own unique atmosphere and play an important role to influence social perception of gaming and their exceptions too. So the latest trend and the shifting concerning serious game in South Korea can be illustrated at the big game and inspiration game. So this is the Guilty Trilogy by Somi is one of the most famous inspiration game that inspire and provoke the thought on the social issues. And the big game project named Suwon provide the player to move location to location, and they enjoy the historical event. So I want to start with the big games. And big games are like literally large scale of games. So the players move through the location and such as building to building and historical architecture to architecture or street or city. So it accommodates over 100 participants who can play at different time rather than simultaneously. And if you want to join this kind of big game, just simply download a specific app and visit a specified location where the game is taking place. So this is the Sowan. It's designed to just learn historical knowledge and history about the Seoul, Songdong, the place. And players are asked to move between the places and buildings and historical artifacts and try to solve the problem. So, and communicate with the internet and with the other players. So this is the short trailer of how to play this game. So I want to share with you. So they have to move to this place to place, like the church and the building, and they have to find the clues from that architectures or that location, and to clear the mission. And this is the inspiration games, like dealing with the histories, and inspiration games means that the games have impact on our society. So they deal with really serious issues like the human right and global conflict, and so they have some kind of representation of issues on realities and inside the game. So Pichika is dealing with the history field, and they represented the real historical figure inside the game too, and they just collaborate with the historians to make a game more accuracy. This new type of serious games have to be really functional and have to have educational value. But on the other hand, they had to make a game really fun with some fun element. So sometimes the reality they shown in the game made players confused about the historical fact within the game reality. So the developers try to just maintain the certain distance between the creating the game realities and the real historical fact. This is the good example of how developers deal with this kind of challenging problems. The Unfolded Camellia Tales is dealing with the most tragic Jeju Island history, Jeju 4.3. And this was a hidden history, and it was taboo to just speak out because the perpetrator and the victims are same, and they are still living in the Jeju Islands together. So it was there are a lot of complexity in there. So they try to just make the game storylines and game itself accurate, but they use some kind of fun factor for fictional elements like the dog and the non-play characters with a friend to just make the game with fun. So incorporating fictional elements into character depiction and the setting was really important to just make this game more enjoyable. So just challenging is there between the reproducing realities. So many of the developers I interviewed, they said that they are facing several challenges, reproducing reality, especially the themes or issues are closely related to the real life, and they are really struggle with how to represent inside the game. Because if they just make some kind of the game really accurately, player said it's not game, it's too much. But if they just make game with only fictional element with for the players' enjoyment, they also got criticism because it was not accurate. So it was really challenging to just make this kind of serious game for developers, and they are doing some kind of field work, and they are starting research, and they take a distance from the realities and the game realities, and they also just collaborate with the expertise. So that is their strategy to make a game better, serious game. So these are my closing thought, and until now, the serious game study in South Korea was like emphasized on the developing serious games or evaluating their effectiveness. So, but I thought it was, however, I thought it was something was missing. So that's the reason that I just started focusing on serious game South Korea, and I'm still studying serious game. I think that it is also important that focusing on the social cultural perspective to just understanding the core concept of serious game, and also to figure out how these serious games are accepted and how this serious game impact to our society. So exploring from the social cultural perspective, we can understand the serious game better, and also we can just gain many valuable insight. So but this time I only focus on Korean scene, but I think I have to just gain a more understanding of serious game. I have to do some kind of add other parameters like other East Asian countries, and also just I am now focusing on the indie game developers who are developing serious game. So in both in Japan and South Korea. So I would like to just integrate this whole thought and whole concept to just figure out what are serious games is from the social cultural context. So that's all. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you very much, Shin Sensei and Lavi also gave a presentation on the situation in Iran, and I think we'll move to the panel discussions. And then before starting, I already got a question from YouTube Live in regards to both Lavi and also Shin Sensei. And then I guess I'll start from the questions to Lavi Sensei. So it's from a former student of yours. I don't know how to recall the name, so I won't do that. But then first, I think he asked was about the Ambassador Love. Ambassador Love was developed using Unreal Engine 4. That's like a game engines. So he was kind of wondering about the situations of sanctions. Does sanction affect the diversity of video game engines available in Iran? Do you have any idea about that?
Good question. Yes, the sanctions hinder and create obstacles. So they have the know-how knowledge in Iran because a lot of actually digital game developing is becoming very popular within youth and within those talented IT graduates. But then when they develop this, they need to rely on some of those engines and platforms globally. And then they have very limited access to it. So presumably, I can direct a person who questioned to an article that actually specifically looks into the platforms and the engines that some of the Iranian game developers are using in order to have the access to it. But yes, it does create a lot of obstacles. That's why many Iranian digitalized games which are produced in Iran and quite very high technological graphics are not very known to researchers and game developers abroad. This is because the limited access for collaboration and restricted access to the platforms. And that's something that researchers and game developers may look into it in the future because there is something quite interesting is happening on the other side.
Great. And that also has to do with this next question is about in many of these game engine platforms, what they do is they provide all kinds of assets. In many cases from other fellow game developers themselves, creating shoes, clothes, and smaller items that can be used for the games. So that would like accelerate the speed of game development process. And he was also wondering if the sanction will prohibit from developer from Iran to actually use these assets. Do you have any knowledge about this?
Limited knowledge I have, but yes, it does create obstacles. It's quite difficult for Iranian game developers to provide and to have access to those let's say texts. But then they are trying to collaborate with the Chinese developers in order to have some access to alternative tools, or somehow to just produce, purchasing it and then try to deconstruct and producing themselves. But then engine platforms, engine machines, it seems they are using one or two, and in terms of which are not fully affected by the sanctions, and the modus operandi and how they do that, I'm not sure. But they have limited access to iOS, for example, limited access to many other platforms, mainly using Android. And then they have their own also Google Play. They created something called Bazaar, which they go to, which is connected to Android system. So they try to do their best to marketize and their games, but also to have access to technology, the tools that they need in order to produce more advanced games. It's quite a big challenge, but despite all these sanctions, quite impressive that they managed to develop such high-tech digitalized games.
Great. Now move on to more close reading type of questions. The person that asking is that like in Turkey, for example, on the TV show, there's a TV show called Magnificent Centuries that seems to reflect self-orientalizations within Turkey, kind of like doing it for the Turkish cultures. Do you see similar thing happening in Iranian game development studios or works that they develop in Iran?
The Iranian game developers, they try to counter-narrate that Orientalist discourse. When it, for example, gave an example, two games, Battlefield 3 and The Prince of Persia, which is produced by the Western developers. You can see the Orientalist discourse in that regard, either culturally or politically, and a generalization of Oriental is as if, as I said, it doesn't matter, it's in Iraq, in Turkey, in Iran, or wherever, the battlefield is there. And the Prince of Persia is amalgamation of Asian, East Asian, South Asian, and Middle Eastern characters that that are narrated negatively. So in Iranian game developers try to create another alternative, like introducing the geography, architecture, and the culture and the music from the Orient, from the Asian point of view, not from the European point of view.
Yeah, I'm stunned to realize about the Prince of Persia is considered a classic, and even was made into Hollywood. And I was thinking, because even the main character is from native land rather than, you know, like being villains and stuff. So I thought it was very useful to like a content tourism or pop culture tourism, having this Prince of Persia as inspiration. But then your impression about it is really not good, and considering it's a main example of Orientalization. So I was really stunned with that understanding in this. So do you see many evidence in the case that the Western developer unintentionally doing this Orientalizations in the games they makes, or what's your opinion about that?
It depends. For example, the Prince of Persia might be more for the market and exoticizing the Orient, but they're creating a kind of exaggeration and no historical base and mixing everything together to make it. But that confuses the gamers when they play that, because it takes them to something that actually distorted history and information. But there are some other games like Battlefield 3 that is intentional, because that is not about marketing only, but also normalization of violence in the Middle East, because literally it started in Iraq and then it moves into the city of Tehran. So it literally shows the city and all the architecture, and the gamer is in charge of destruction of the city and the elimination of whatever is seen there. So in some games, quite intentional, because it's normalizing violence with a clear picture that is in the Middle East. But some of them, like Prince of Persia, from my point of view, is just merely for market, but a bit distorted history and a bit confusing for the gamers.
Thank you. So I got similar point in terms of questions. So I'll give hands to Sato Sensei to ask questions to Sing about impression of her presentation and whatnot.
Right. Thank you very much, Professor Nakamura. Actually, Shin Sensei's presentation spoke on, because I'm very much interested in actually serious game. And it's because we saw us teach various languages and cultures from Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. But of course, there is an increasing pressure how to keep those, less taught languages if there are students who take those languages, only a couple of students who take those languages. And we are kind of thinking how we can use a game to actually support teaching those languages. And Shin Sensei, actually, first question from myself is, it's about the governmental support creating game. Because I've heard from one of my students that in the past or even now, the Korean government supported translating Korean novels. I mean, translating Korean novels into English or other European languages. And I think actually in the UK, now Korean novels are very, very popular. And it's kind of a little bit similar to what Japanese government supported Japanese culture, so-called like a cool Japan. And I would like to know the idea behind why the Korean government is supporting creating those games. And I also would like to know more about the G-Learning project, because this is actually what we are really keen to understand, and hopefully also can do research in the future, and what we can learn by using this, G-Learning games, can I call, and what was the purpose? Is it promoting language learning or more like Korean cultures and that kind of things I would like to know.
Oh, thank you very much for the great questions. And I heard that I mentioned in my slide that KOCA, the Korean content agencies, are just doing a lot of projects on publishing Korean novels and the dramas, and because I think that this kind of whole project is based on the K-wave. They are doing some kind of national strategy to just promote the Korean game also, because the 2000s, the Koreans have some kind of leading country for the game industry, but now the Korean games are just not that famous and accepted by the global market. So they try to just make this kind of promotion policy to just promote and targeting to the not only South Korean market, they also just want to go to the global market. So it's in the background of this kind of support policy, they have kind of Hallyu Wave. They want to promote the Korean content to the global market and global. And the second question, the G-Learning project is I'm sorry to say that because the G-Learning was in fail because it was too much focus on the educational value. So they made some kind of textbooks, and they also made some kind of this videos. And they even though they use some kind of successful MMORPG games, it was too boring to the students, especially the young generation. So it was totally a huge fail. But it has a kind of like potential point, I think, because they are just focusing not only the school curriculum, they want to just use this kind of game for ethics and social communication also, not for only language or math or science. So that part is, I think, a really important part we have to just think about for the future game learning project if we want to do it. So I think the important point is just because serious game is game, so we have to just make a balance between the educational values and the fun element. But it's not easy. But in South Korea scene, it was too much. There are too much emphasis on the educational values because of the negative image of digital games. So that was the one of the reasons the failure of G-Learning project. But yes, does it make sense?
Yes.
I just answer your question?
Yes, pretty much. Thank you very much. Can I
Thank you.
keep asking her
Yes.
question? Or?
Go ahead. Yes, please.
Thank you very much. And you emphasize on the socio-cultural aspect of your research. And that is really an interesting point for me. And I found that this Bang culture it's actually very important because both Korea and Japan are aging society. And this kind of place, I think Japan used to have like a playing Go. People can go to place and then they can play Go. They don't necessarily know each other, but by playing Go, they can chat and then become like, not really friends maybe, but, to get to know each other. And I think, especially in an aging society, people can feel, being isolated. But this kind of place, people can just go, and then by playing game, they can become like friends and they can talk about everyday life. And I would like to know about this kind of culture because I haven't heard that kind of place exist in the UK, for example. I'm not so sure about Japan. I know game center because I used to go to game center when I was student. But could you explain a bit about also kind of the history of the place?
Thank you for the important question. I'm not specialized in the punk cultures, but I think the punk culture is really centered in the Korean culture, especially leisure for people how people spending their times. So they are in South Korea. They also have some kind of place for the elderly people, and it's called the community centers. Like community center, they go there and they just talk and interact with others. But even though the school or Hanahuta, the recent in South Korea, they play through the internet and then play together, and they connect with the other people in the different places. So, and then they also just go to the gaming place too, not only for the young generation. This kind of gaming place is more for the huge spectrum of generation, especially the board game cafe is for more for the 40s or 50s people also just go there to play game with their just colleagues and friends. And also Buyarbang is more like the family-centered gaming places. So I think this kind of gaming places are really just important to this in Korean gaming culture. But unfortunately, the PC bang is decreasing because of the influence of the COVID-19 also. So this transformation is moving to the metaverse. So they made some kind of like metaverse place to just gather and play a game together. So that kind of change also seen as a recent trend in South Korea too.
Okay, thank you very much. Nakamura-sensei, is there any question from the floor? Or...
Yes, I got another question from YouTube channel. So also that has to do with what Shin Sensei said about the metaverse. There's a student asking about whether or not rise of VR games globally for education programs such as medicine and stuff like that. Are there anything like that happening in Korea using VR for a serious game purpose, and how's the influence of that?
Yes, the most permanent field of utilizing. Sorry, thank you for asking questions. Is education, but the second one is the medicine and healthcare, because Sato Sensei mentioned that also this globally the aging society is the problem, global issue. So in Korea, they're using the VR or AR in the setting of the hospital, at the hospital, and then using that the elderly people to just getting a rehabilitation or improve their just cognitive skills. And some of the research team made the VR games for diabetes to just control their just healthcare. And then, but it's not common, but they're trying to just make this kind of VR and AR new technology to just utilize the serious game in the medicine too. So they're changing too.
Yeah, and then as I think you mentioned about the balance between fun game and educational games. And then there's another research asking which one is more effective in terms of serious game results? Is the fun games more effective or more accurate serious games more effective in actually giving, providing impact to those subjective for the serious game?
Oh, that's a really difficult question, so I can just answer now. I'm not sure, but as seen as the serious game scene is from the South Korea, I think that serious game can be a starting point to just people attract the people's attention for some social issues or some educational issues. So just I think just reproducing and keeping accuracy is really important to just make a game as a serious game. But we should not just forget that serious game is a game. So we have to just put some kind of fun element to just a player to enjoy. But it doesn't have to be a fantasy, or it doesn't have to be more just a non-fictional thing, but we can just make some kind of like element to just to make the players to just get immersive and get to the games, get engaged to the game. So I think both are really important, but from the scene of South Korean serious game scene, I think that the fun factor is kind of really important thing to just attract the players first in the very first sight.
All right, great. And then question going back to Professor Alavi. So you introduced so many games from Iran, and then she was impressed with that, but then she kind of categorized it into two types. One is kind of like a propaganda games produced to promote the government, and the other one is more like Islamic era game if to present mystical depiction of Iran histories, especially like a pre-Islamic era. How much do you think these games were successful in representing the Iranian culture, considering mixed cultures of current generations, from your perspective?
A very good question. I mean, I would follow what my colleague mentioned, Shin Sensei. I mean, I can categorize as serious games and then fun games. But then when it comes to the cultural element and the political propaganda or counterculture, which was the one like Ambassador of Love, for instance, or the Shadow Commander, these are literally trying to create a narrative based on historical elements to reintroduce, because Iran is quite a young country. The number is a huge number of youth, which are also very interested in Western produced games, and there is a divorce from the historical elements of their own country and the region, and the games is aiming at not only abroad or global market as a propaganda, but also trying to remind the younger generation about the historical elements from different perspectives. But the other question about the pre-Islamic Persian Empire also is the same, is less propaganda, but is promotion of the culture, which again, there is a divorce from it. We don't hear that from Hollywood movies or video games, or if there is, like a Prince of Persia, is completely distorted and confusing. There is no historical base for it. So they try to reintroduce some aspects of the history, pre-Islamic or post, but the pre-Islamic, like a Persian Empire and all the rest of it, just as a kind of educational elements of the cultural point, but also for the players to enjoy playing it, to have fun at the same time. And other games that are introduced are just fun games, the same as the Western games, some of them without any specific history, just heroizing like a warrior I mentioned, or some of them is for promotion of language for the foreigners and for the Iranians, second generations living abroad, to learn Persian, all the music and all the rest of it. So it's a few categories that you can see they're producing.
Okay, and another, I think that's the last question from audience, that you also mentioned about the situation about sanctions, and then he was concerned a bit about the money issues. That usually the platform allow you to actually generate income, but then does sanction prevent the game developer from around to actually generate income from this platform, or you could just make money from that?
Very good question. Actually, I was asking for this question. Yes, because of sanctions, it's a double sword problem. One is that many Iranian gamers try to purchase the Western produced gamers. So in other words, the currency is going out. But the developers try to create a market not only for the foreign countries, but also for the inside, to maintain that kind of a, also to be a market for the economy, for producers. This has been a machine for employment for young, talented producers. So they enter the market and they make some income for themselves. But due to the sanction, the problem is more internalized, localized. So the sanction doesn't allow the foreign consumers to purchase, or for the Iranians to purchase the foreign gamers, in terms of when those that they need to be purchased. So yes, it does create complications, but to somehow they manage to have some sort of internal platform for internal purchases. But then, having said that, I was amazed to see some of the games are actually advertised on Google Play, and some of them are on iOS, due to having connection with the counterparts abroad. So some of them actually entered Google Play and iOS, but I know how the money comes and goes from in that case.
All right, thank you very much. And I think, wow, its time is already up after I'm asking so many questions from an audience. And then I guess I'd like to have Sato Sensei give final comments, and then comes Shin Sensei, and finally by Alabi, and I'd like to finish off this session. Please start from Sato Sensei.
Okay, I think today was so exciting, and both presentations were fabulous, and I learned a lot from both presenters. And Professor Nakamura, we actually keep continuing this collaboration and organize more events, possibly in person in Kyoto or London. And I really hope that we can develop our collaboration further.
Okay, Shin Sensei, please give some comments, final thoughts.
It was really just a fascinating presentation, and to just know the Iran situation of games too. And even though I was so nervous, it was a great opportunity to just have this kind of meeting. Thank you.
Okay, Alabi Sensei.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. It was amazing. I've learned a lot from Shin Sensei presentation, but one thing was quite interesting that I noticed at the end is that we were talking about Iran and Korea, and it's hosted by Japan. So literally it was Asianization of the technology and the future of AI, game studies, digital and cyberspace. That is actually good news, is that from West Asia, Iran, to East Asia, Japan and Korea, we are entering a new era of Asianization, I would say, of the cyberspace.
It sounds great, and a great conclusion. So I'll give hands right back to Travis then.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for two really fascinating talks and some really good discussion. I've certainly learned a lot, and it really makes me curious to learn more about, not just video games in Japan and the US, and but now that we know a little bit more about games in Iran and in Korea, it makes me wonder what the world of video games looks like in Germany and Poland and Israel and Thailand and Laos and, everywhere around the world, right? So, and it's always interesting, whether it's video games or whether it's anything else. I think there's always another country or another region or another culture that we're not talking about. And so the diversity of our world. Thank you, everyone. And I'm afraid we're out of time. I wish we could talk more. I just want to announce that our next International ARC seminar will be next week. It's a sort of typical format, normal format seminar. The speaker will be Christophe Marquet, the head of EFEO Kyoto, the French school of the Far East, the head of the Kyoto branch of that, who will be sharing with us some new discoveries in France regarding Hiroshige's fan prints. And then on May 8th, we'll have the second half of this collaborative event between the Art Research Center and the Centers of Translation Studies and the Japan Research Center at SOAS, with Professor Monica Hinkle and Professor Takinaka Yumi speaking about ukiyo-e and contemporary interpretations. So I think on that note, okay, have a good night, everyone. Or a good day if you're in England.
Yeah. Thank you so much. See you.
Looking forward to meeting you in person sometime.
Yeah.
Best wishes from London. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shin-sensei. Thank you, Nana.
Thank you, Shin-sensei. Thank you, Ari. Thank you, Travis. Thank you, Professor Nakamura. See you.
All right. Have a good day, everyone.